Hi everybody, TJ Mack of Vintage Cards and Nostalgia here. And have you ever taken a moment to think about the word passion and what it really means? A passion is often connected with being the loudest voice in the room. You know, the guy or gal that repeatedly shouts when giving their opinion or describing something. They think the higher the decibel of their voice, the greater the passion they're exuding. And when it comes to the hobby, I think of Don West, the boisterous host of Shop at Home, which usually aired in the wee hours of the morning in the 1990s. I wasn't really collecting during that time, but I would come home after a night out with friends, grab a cold piece of cheese and pepperoni pizza, and watch him on TV. And there you'd see good old Don shouting away as he peddles his cards that either have little value or are way overpriced. He reminded me of those 19th century medicine men that would travel from town to town with an elixir that would cure everything that would ail you. In this case, Don had endless supplies of junk wax for the offering. He was so passionate about the cards that he would take a 3,200 count box of different cards and he would peddle them as if they're cardboard gold. He would say, for $79.95, you're guaranteed $400 in value. I even remember one time he was offering a package with a guaranteed playing days card of Ted Williams. You could hear Don's loud voice. That's right, a playing days Ted Williams card, and he'd keep repeating himself. And it just seemed like a great deal. Now, if you knew nothing about Ted Williams cards, you'd be very tempted to call and place an order. And if you did, when that package arrived, you would open it up, and it would most likely be a 1959 Fleer card, which was based on his life. And most of those cards are worth about $5 to $10 in decent condition. I figured Don was appealing to a bunch of drunk guys thinking they're going to get rich and well-meaning grandparents trying to acquire a keepsake for their grandchildren. Don and his straight man partner, they were pretty sneaky. Now, of course, passion goes much deeper than being loud. I want to share a definition that I read in the Urban Dictionary. It defined passion as putting more energy into something than is required to do it. It is more than just enthusiasm or excitement. Passion is ambition that becomes action as you put as much of your heart, your mind, your body, and your soul into something as possible. Now, for me, the passion I emanate towards the hobby is the process of how I acquire cards and magazines and their place in my collection. It's about the curation, the display, building something that gives a sense of self. Now, the cardboard artifacts I possess are a representation of a place and a time. I can look at this 1974 Topps Juan Marichal with that distinctive high leg kick, and I'm in Candlestick Park on a breezy summer afternoon watching the Dominican dandy work his magic on the mound. I can see my collection through the eyes of a child who couldn't wait to open a pack of football cards in 1978 to pull the first card of Tony Dorsett of the defending Super Bowl champions, the Dallas Cowboys. Now, Dorsett had a brilliant 1977 season that saw him run his way to the Offensive Rookie of the Year, but yet he didn't have a card that year. So I'm sure there were many kids clamoring in 78 to get one. The aspect, though, I enjoy most about collecting is reflected in these cards of Sonny Jurgensen and Pete Rose. Now, on Saturdays, I tend to listen to YouTube as I clean up around the house. And last week, I just finished a video when I saw on my feed another video with the title, Did You Ever See Sonny Jurgensen Play? Well, I didn't see him play. I know some about Sonny Jurgensen, and I talked a little bit about him recently in one of my videos when I went through the 1958 Topps football set. He was a chubby, redheaded quarterback who never won a championship and played on a lot of losing teams. He's in the Hall of Fame because he put up big-time statistical numbers, throwing for 26,222 yards in the 1960s, which is second to only Johnny Unitas, who threw for over 26,500. Now, Sonny led all quarterbacks in the 1960s with 207 touchdown passes. Fran Tarkenton's pretty far behind in second place with 186. So Sonny could throw the ball, but I didn't know much more about him than that. Watching this video gave me a glimpse into how he was perceived as a player during his career. He took over as a starting quarterback in 1961 after future Hall of Famer Norm Van Brocklin retired after leading the Eagles to the 1960 NFL Championship over the Packers. Now, Sonny's first season went well. He led the NFL in passing yards and the Eagles to a 10-4 record. Unfortunately, it was all downhill from there. The Eagles fans turned on him as he went 4-15-2 over the next two seasons. Now, many didn't think Sonny was serious enough about football. His pudgy physique and the way he would casually put his arms at his hips when he came to the line did not endear him to the surly fans who flocked Philadelphia's Franklin Field. He was eventually traded to the Redskins, and it was said that Philadelphia bar owners wore black armbands because Sonny was known to frequent the bar scene even on nights before games. He could be seen partying well past his curfew. Well, Sonny brought his golden arm and his penchant for a good time with him to Washington, where once again he put up big numbers, but still wasn't winning. He averaged a new coach every 2 years in his 18 seasons. One of those men was Browns legend Hall of Fame quarterback Otto Graham, who took over the Redskins in 1966. Sonny and Otto would often clash. Sonny didn't help his cause when he said, "I like women and scotch. Otto likes candy bars and milkshakes." Needless to say, Graham was angry. Well, Otto was eventually gone, as the Redskins didn't win with him either, but Sonny remained. He thought he turned a corner in his career when the great Vince Lombardi took over as coach of the Washington Redskins in 1969 and led them to a 7-5 record, only to see the famed coach pass away a year later. In 1973, Sonny was there to see the Redskins make it to Super Bowl VII, where they lost to the Dolphins 14-7. But he didn't play in that game due to an Achilles injury. I saw in the video a quote from Don Shula that Sonny gave, that he had said that the game would have been much better, Sonny, if you were in it than what was presently on the field. And that meant a lot to Sonny, that Don Shula thought that much of him, that if the undefeated Dolphins had played the Washington Redskins, it would have been maybe a much more challenging game than it turned out to be. But I found it very interesting that the Dolphins only won that game 14-7. It wasn't like they blew the Redskins out. But maybe he thought that Sonny could possibly give him a hard time and maybe upset them in that game. The Redskins coach at the time, George Allen, was not very fond of Jurgensen because he thought Sonny, all he wanted to do was throw the football, and he oftentimes wouldn't listen to the plays that Allen would call. So he replaced him with Billy Kilmer, and it pretty much remained that way until Sonny retired at the age of 40. And at that time, he had the fourth most passing yards in NFL history. What was pretty neat is in that 1974 season, he took on the defending champion Miami Dolphins, and he played in that game at quarterback, and he ended up upsetting the Dolphins that year. So maybe Shula was right. Had Sonny played in that Super Bowl, maybe the Dolphins wouldn't have gone undefeated that season. When I was done watching this video, it just made me want to go through my Sonny Jurgensen cards, which I showed you here today. And this is where my greatest passion lies. It's in the process of discovery, discovering more about these players that I collect. What it made me do then is I went through my magazines and I found this cover that I'm going to show you right now. This 1969 issue would have been from the year that Coach Lombardi was heading the Washington Redskins. And this is from my father-in-law's collection. He had bought this from the newsstand back in 1969. And this is one that I've read this magazine. I've gone through it. There's a nice interview in there with Jurgensen and Frank Robinson, as you can see on the cover. But I'm going to talk today about a very interesting team that I knew very little about from 1969. And that's where the 69 Topps Pete Rose that I showed earlier comes in. Here you see beautiful color photos inside the magazine from that 69 Reds team. And these 6 players were known as the Nasty Six. They got that name from Reds second baseman Tommy Helms. Now, this was before the Big Red Machine. And in the article, Juan Marichal was quoted as saying he would win 35 games if he pitched for the Reds. Now, some experts consider them the finest hitting team since the early 50s Dodgers that featured a lineup of Gilliam, Reese, Snyder, Hodges, Campanella, and of course Jackie Robinson. At the All-Star break, the 69 Reds were hitting .285 as a team, while the league average was only .248. Now here are their numbers at the All-Star break from that year. Alex Johnson was batting .342, which was 4th in the league. Tony Perez was batting .336, which was 6th in the league. Pete Rose was batting .327, 7th in the league. Johnny Bench, .319, 10th in the league. Center fielder Bobby Tolan, .318, 11th in the league. And first baseman Lee May, .316, which was 13th in the league. At the break, these 6 players had 97 home runs, which was more than 20 teams in the league. Their 344 runs was more than 10 teams, and these 6 players only had 6 less hits than the entire Angels team. Now, I'm not going to talk about Perez, Rose, and Bench because they're all well known. I will say that Bench is already considered in this magazine as one of the best to play the position, which is really crazy considering he was just in his 2nd season, but it tells you the impact he had. Now, Lee May was a product of the Reds farm system like Tony Perez, Pete Rose, and Johnny Bench, and he would later gain fame as being part of the deal that would land Joe Morgan. May went on to have a heck of a career, though, finishing 3rd in RBIs for the entire decade of the 1970s with 936. He had more RBIs than Reggie Jackson and Willie Stargell had in the 70s. Now, Tolan was a part-time player with the Cardinals who mainly sat behind Maris. He struggled as a hitter before finding his stroke in 1969. He finished the year at .305, and then in 1970 he hit .316 and led the league with 57 stolen bases. He never again hit .300 though, and he did have a pretty good career though before retiring in 1979. Then you had Alex Johnson, who finished 1969 with a .315 average, and then he won the batting title in 1970, but on the Angels with a .329 average. From there, he played with 4 teams in his last 5 seasons before retiring in 1976. Now, the careers of Tolan and Johnson, they don't seem like much, but when you read the pages of a magazine like this one from 1969, you capture the excitement of the times, and it lends a whole different perspective on these players because their future story is yet to be written. It can really make you see cards in your binders and they come to life because you're looking again at the contemporary times, the moments that these players were playing, and it just lends a whole new perspective. So how did the Reds finish in 1969? Well, they were in 3rd place with 89 wins. They scored the most runs in 1969, tied for the league in team batting with .277 average along with the Pittsburgh Pirates, and they were 4th in home runs. They were the best offensive team in baseball. The problem was their starting pitching wasn't very good after you got through Jim Maloney, who was really one of the best pitchers of the 1960s. Now, if they only had Juan Marichal on that staff, imagine the success they could have had. So how we approach the hobby is different for each of us, but if you're not passionate about the items you acquire, what's the point of having them? There's this tendency to feel as if you need to add a big card or to show your latest acquisitions to put out a video. For me, the joy and passion is in the process. and the discovery of new ways to connect with the hobby and to look at the same card in a different and interesting way. That is where I find the fulfillment. Everybody have a great Easter, and God bless all of you until we speak again.